Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. This is episode number 11, who would have believed it, of the Coarse Grind podcast. My name is Sean Rossler, creator, host, and your guide to all things culinary for the next 30 to 45 to even 60 minutes, if I should be so lucky. Folks, remember my professed fascination with seasons 4 and 9 of Top Chef? I mean, it goes on record. The guests from Top Chef have been from seasons 4 and 9, and I'm a creature of habit. I'm unable to break out of it. And, you know, today, like it was season 9's turn to shine last time, it's season 4's today. So being drawn to the flavors of Asian cuisine since a young age, tonight's guest moved to New York City, where she decided food was her passion and career choice. At only 17, she attended Johnson & Wales University and received a BS in food service management. She moved to South Florida, diversifying her cooking palette and absorbing the local flair of Latin food. With Asian cuisine still in her heart, though, our guest moved back to New York and got more involved with more Asian restaurants, working at Asia de Cuba, Rain, and then Public. Lisa says she always exercises Asian flair in her dishes and has taught herself as much as she can about the cuisine. Fast forward, she's now dominating the food truck scene with Sweet Chili, a true chef-driven food truck whose menu had me literally openly salivating on my keyboard, a right I usually only reserve for my 20-month-old son, but I kind of gave into it. Amazing chef, amazing career, and here's to what I'm sure is going to be an amazing interview with her. Ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between, my guest today, runner-up from season 4 Chicago of Bravo's Top Chef, Chef Lisa Fernandes. Chef, how are we doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Excellent, excellent, excellent. So, food truck, we were just kind of riffing a little bit before we started recording about the food truck scene, and, really seems to be a very, not just up and coming, but making major impact in the food scene today. So it's really cool to actually talk to someone who's got her hands deep into the food truck industry. And we were just talking about the sometimes legal implications therein, and hopefully we can get into that a little bit into the interview. So just to give you an idea of how the show is laid out, 3 sections: starters, mains, afters. We're going to first delve into how food became what it is you do, and not just what you do, but do so extremely well. What brought you to it? What made you the artist you are today? Next, we'll go into mains. Where are you at? What are you doing? Kind of gave away a little bit in the intro about the food truck, Sweet Chili, but I want to get way further into it because it just sounds awesome. And finally, the afters section, a little bit more out of the box, off the cuff kind of stuff. But as I always joke, 10 episodes in, no one's been injured with those questions yet, and I don't see anyone getting too terribly injured today. So with all of that said, Chef, where did you grow up eating? Can you tell me about that?
Absolutely. I was born in Toronto, Canada. Insert Canadian joke here. And there's a huge Asian population in like the greater Toronto area. So probably when I was old enough to chew food, we were eating dim sum every weekend and going out for every type of Asian cuisine for, whether it was lunch or brunch or dinner. And so I was really kind of exposed to those flavors at a very early age. And to me, that was just normal. Like Sundays for brunch, you went and you had Chinese, you went for dim sum. And then when my mother was cooking at home in Toronto, she always had Asian ingredients, fish sauce, or, simple things like soy sauce or ginger or lemongrass. And so I became exposed to all of that very, very quickly. When I was 11, I moved to New York, and unfortunately where we were, just outside of the city, wasn't very Asian restaurant populated, but we would drive from Rockland County all the way to Flushing every Sunday, pretty much. We would have dim sum, and then we would go to one of the huge markets and just pick up all kinds of ingredients for the house. So everywhere that I lived growing up, I was around Asian food, good Asian food.
Awesome. And it's very interesting that you made the delineation between Asian food and good Asian food. I can imagine that that's a pretty wide gap for you.
Yeah, definitely.
Right on. So growing up, what kind of an eater were you? Picky, not picky,
Oh,
any
wow.
particularities?
I didn't grow up with the typical I don't want to say palate because I was a kid. I mean, I still liked ice cream and we still went to the store and bought candy, but there's a particular restaurant that it still exists. I was actually just in Toronto and it's still there. And it was like a nice steakhouse. And when we would go, my parents would have, I don't know, I'm sure a nice steak and whatever with wine. And instead of ordering off the kids menu, I would get like a grilled salmon steak with a baked potato. I don't know what, 7-year-old would want that, but that's what I wanted every time we went to this restaurant. I know that when I was much, much smaller, I would eat alfalfa sprouts, like in the little plastic clamshell. My mother would just have me in the little seat in the shopping cart, and she would get me a package of that, and I would just eat it the whole time while we were in the grocery store. And then my mother would scan like the empty container, and the lady would just be so confused, like, would that little kid just ate that? Or I would eat handfuls of raw bean sprouts. When I was, I want to say maybe 9 or 10, I got into a phase where I was like, I wanted to make stuff with tofu. And then I was eating just toasted, like seaweed, just sheets of nori. As long as they were like the nice, like salty, crispy ones, I would just eat them like crackers. Like I would bring them with me to school, and people are like, "What are you eating?" I'm like, "It's nori. It's delicious." So my eating habits were not, I didn't grow up with mac and cheese or, pizza. It was more like, barbecuing, whole fish, in the backyard, or fiddleheads or asparagus. It was not, meatloaf and mashed potatoes.
Right on, right on. That's really awesome because I have a 7-year-old son. I have two other sons, but the 7-year-old son, um, he's the one that asks me, Daddy, can you brown some butter to put over my steak? Or Daddy, can I have sushi instead of pizza? And I find that so intriguing. And I don't know, kind of like how a dad like watches a son get his first touchdown in like Pee Wee League. Now I'm listening to you say this, and I'm looking at his habits going, holy shit. Oh my God, he's going to be on Top
Mm-hmm.
Chef. So that's really cool. That's really awesome. When you look back to those childhood foods, maybe not even necessarily the ones that you like, you picked at in the cart. Maybe it was something you had or you had out. Was there one food or a couple foods that you miss the most that really create that almost nostalgic pang deep down?
I think the things that I crave the most, it's the one thing is definitely not salmon. I think I ate so much salmon as a kid that now just the smell of salmon makes me want to throw up, especially if it's being cooked. If I have to eat it, it has to be raw. Once you cook it, I can't go near it. So it's funny that I ate so much salmon when I was a kid, and now if the person next to me, like if I'm at dinner with my family and someone orders salmon, I have to change seats because I'll throw up on their plate. Um, but things that definitely kind of strike that, I guess the nostalgia or like any kind of childhood things that I miss the most is there's just so many foods when I go back home that I have to eat from like a specialty popcorn place that I was, riding my bike to the mall when I was 6 probably and getting this bag of popcorn or this frozen yogurt before, this is like 1985, 1986, so way before the worlds of, pink berry and red mango ever erupted. Certain just traditional dim sum dishes, some basic dumplings, and actually some pizza. A really good, not gourmet pizza, but not just standard cheese pizza. I definitely I crave all those things. I find myself when I go back home just kind of making sure that I hit all of those items like all at once. Like, okay, we have to go here so I can get this, and then while I'm eating that, I'm planning the next meal so I can go get the other thing that I miss eating the most because you just can't get certain things just aren't the same in New York.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. There's something about just going home. My producer John and I come from a very, very, very small town named Honesdale, Pennsylvania, and to this day, it was actually on the first episode I asked this very same question to Dakota Weiss from season 9, and we got going on the pizza thing, and it made me realize that for all the pizza that I've had, there was this little hole in the wall place down at the other end of Main Street that to this day, like, it's long gone, it's long closed, and you can never recreate it. But if you stop and you think about it, you almost get sad remembering it.
Yeah, I mean, food is emotional. So when you eat something that's good. You see people doing that kind of happy dance where they're
Yep.
smiling and they're kind of bobbing up and down and they're moving their shoulders while they're eating it. That's that feeling. That's why people there's there's emotional eating, and it doesn't have to be, oh, I'm sad because of a breakup, or I lost a job, or I didn't do well in a test, so I'm going to eat, 3 boxes of cookies. Sometimes it's I'm in a really good mood, and because I'm in a really good mood, I want to eat, this specific pizza from Toronto, or, a specific pasta dish from a restaurant in Little Italy, whatever it is. Food can be all kinds of emotion. So I think knowing you could never ever get a dish that used to make you so happy again can be a little bit depressing, I
Hmm.
think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. In my case, I mean, I'm a sad fat kid in a slender-ish kid's body. So, I totally understand where you're coming from there. Um, so, you're young, you have this elevated palate, and all these foods around you. Who was your greatest culinary influence growing up?
That's pretty easy. That was definitely my mother. My mother is a fantastic cook. She never did it as a profession. I don't think she would ever want to, but she has this amazing ability to taste something in a restaurant, and it could be a sauce, a marinade, a salad dressing, and she can pretty much tell you everything that's in it. Um, she might get stumped once in a while on maybe 1 out of 12 ingredients, but she's pretty dead on, and she doesn't cook with recipes. She never makes it the same twice. It's always just kind of, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, whereas most non-professional chefs really do need recipes. Or she'll take a recipe and she'll say, okay, well, I don't want to put that in it, but I'm going to put this in it instead. And it's 1,000 times better than the recipe could have ever been if you followed it. And watching her with that behavior in the kitchen caused me to cook that way and me to behave that way. And, there have been times where I've been visiting my parents and I'm making something to eat and I'm like, her pantry is a little bit different than my pantry. I always have garlic and onions, whereas she usually doesn't have garlic and onions, and I always have limes and she always has lemons. So occasionally I'll get a little stumped and say, "Oh, I wish I had, a lime." And she'll taste it and then she'll just take over for like 30 seconds and then I taste it and it's amazing. And she basically just schooled me.
Wow, wow. You can definitely see then where the influence came from for sure. In that case, I think she would have done well on the show with the blindfold taste test as far as being able to
Definitely.
identify
Oh yeah.
ingredients.
Oh yeah.
Right on, man. And I mean that's an invaluable skill to be able to go to, someone else's restaurant or someone else's home and be inspired and then be able to take that back to your restaurant and run with it. That's got to be a very, very marketable skill. So, but she swore off
Definitely.
professional kitchen, swore she'd never do it.
Yep. I'm the only one who's crazy enough to do this to myself.
Right on. Um, so obviously your mom's your influence. We have this palette growing up. When did it all come together for you? Like when did you take a step back and look at food and realize this is more than just point A to point B energy in my body. There's an art to this. There's a science to it. There's both. When did it hit you that this was a calling? This is what you wanted to do?
Um, I think it was pretty early on when I just always wanted to be in the kitchen and, making breakfast or playing restaurant. And then every single job that I've ever had, minus like 2 weeks as a telemarketer in college, has always been in some sort of food related place, whether it was working at one of those little things in the food court or at an ice cream parlor in the town where I grew up, where they made their own ice creams, to, becoming a line cook when I was 15. Um, it was just, I always wanted to cook. It was just like fun for me when I was little. There was an Italian restaurant and my parents were friendly with the owners, and he would let me like come through the kitchen and go into the highlight of my month or year to go into the kitchen and like look around. It was just fascinating for me. And I think when I was probably about 12, I grabbed some of my mother's cookbooks, like old Betty Crocker cookbooks, and I made three things. I made these cornflake cookies that were the most addictive, ridiculous cookies you've ever had. They were like crack. Um, I made, we didn't, we didn't know what they tasted like the day after I baked them because no matter how many I made, they never lasted. No matter how hard, like
Holy
we would try
crap.
to hide them, and then we would just go and get them again and just eat them. And unfortunately, I don't have that recipe anymore, which I'm really sad about. But then I had a kind of like an Asian-y chicken dish with some ginger and garlic, and then like canned mandarin oranges, and then the liquid from the canned mandarin oranges. But it was really good. And then I had a Kahlua chicken that I did with like dried cherries and killed half of my dad's Kahlua bottle, making this reduction. And I must have been 12, 13, maybe 14, probably 13. And everything was really, really good. And it wasn't like, the parents being nice saying, oh, it's delicious. And really, it's like not edible. It was really good. And I started saying, I really like this. I like the feeling of them saying that it is really good. And I can tell they're not lying because they're devouring it. And so I got a couple jobs, in actual kitchens. And then by the time I was 16, I was like, okay, I called Johnson and Wales to find out about their early admissions program for seniors in high school. I got in, and then the rest was history. So it was kind of like that spark was there when I was very, very young, and then it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger until finally I said, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And I've been one of the lucky people who knew from the beginning, and I've never deviated from that.
That's amazing. It's such a rarity to ever hear somebody in the professional culinary field go, yeah, I just decided it last week and I'm 38 or something like that. There's so much the majority of the time know it from square one. Like to say that you were a line cook at 15, that's remarkable. Do you remember the name of the restaurant?
I worked at Bennigan's.
Bennigan's. Nice. Okay.
And I still
Right on.
remember pretty much all of the ingredients and all of I mean, I was, the pantry cook. I worked the salad station, but I could still tell you how to make pretty much all the salads that were on the menu.
Wow. I mean, to go back, that's amazing. But just like 15 and then at 16 to call Johnson and Wales, that's incredible. So I mean, you just knew. So that effort, that passion, that love has carried you quite literally to where you are today.
Hmm.
And looking at what you do in the here and now, we mentioned the sweet chili food truck. We can mention the show Top Chef. We can kind of combine all that together. Where is it that you currently look to for inspiration for your food? Is it people? Is it places? A lot of times people are influenced by like a place they're at or a particular person. What would it be for you?
For me, it's typically when I go out to eat, I do a lot of Asian dining because it's such a broad thing to say, I want Asian. There's so many things you can choose from. And probably for the last 15 or 17 years, I try something and I'm like, this is really good. And this gives me an idea. And, I think maybe I should apply the technique. I can tell that they did, I can tell they braised this pork belly and then they made it crispy. So I'm going to apply that to the pork belly that I want to serve. Or, this sauce is delicious, but I think if I added, these two ingredients and then put it on this protein or dress this salad, that it would taste, even better. So I take what I try that's, authentic Thai or Vietnamese dishes, and then I apply kind of however my brain kind of translates it, and then I turn that into a dish. Sometimes it doesn't work, but I would say about 95% of the time it comes out really, really good.
So then that kind of mirrors the way that your mom operates in that, she can take it, she can improve on it. You're kind of doing exactly what she has done and has done with you, not to mention.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, she is my mother, and I'm
Right on.
definitely, you know, when I'm in a kitchen with her, we have fun because she's watching how I'm doing something and she's learning, and then, she has her moment where she tastes something and she's like, oh, that needs a teaspoon of Chinese red vinegar, and she puts it in, and all of a sudden the dish went from like, oh, that's pretty good to like, oh my God, that's amazing. Like, what just happened?
Ah, she knows it needs Chinese red vinegar, and I'm gonna have to Google Chinese red vinegar. So that's quite a skill. That's quite a skill to be had.
Yeah.
Um, so
Yep.
over this career that you've been inspired from just the food around you in general, what what would you lay claim to being your greatest creation that you made? You put your stamp on it, you walked away from it and said, F yeah, that's mine.
Oh, wow. That's hard to say. I feel like throughout my career, every maybe 2 to 3 years, I've had like one dish that has been like the absolute like rock star dish or rock star sauce. I would say the furthest back, you know, probably, starting with like those cornflake cookies. But then I had a dish that I used to do down in South Florida where I would take shredded phyllo and I would wrap fish fillet, like a red snapper fillet, in it. And I did it with a white ponzu, and I had like macadamia nuts and candied pineapple that I candied myself, and this dish was insane, and it looked like a giant shredded wheat, like a 12-inch shredded wheat, but then inside was like perfectly cooked, moist red snapper with like ridiculous sauce. And I have the recipe in a book, like in a little like notebook, God knows where, somewhere buried in a closet. But that was my signature dish for, I would say, about 3 years while I was at that restaurant. And then fast forward
Damn.
to the last maybe 5 years or so, I've been very into a spicy Vietnamese caramel that I've been making, and I've made, I would say, probably 30 different variations of it, and it's so good that I want to bottle it. I just need to find the time and a bottling company to get it bottled, because it's just tastes like anything you've ever had anywhere else. So if I had to guess, I would say that's probably my signature item right now. But also I've taken all of like some of my, I guess, greatest hits, for lack of a better term, and put them on the menu for sweet chili. So those are also, those are like my other 7 kids. So I can't really pick favorites among my children.
Right on. Right on. Well, I guess it all depends on the day. I have 3 kids and I can pick a favorite. Depends on how they're acting, but I guess recipes don't quite piss you off as much. Sorry, kids, if you ever listen to
No,
this, you
definitely
don't
not.
need therapy. I love you all equally. Cool, cool. Trend wise, obviously you're in the industry. Obviously you know what you're doing beyond words. Um, what do you see as being the next like big thing in food? And I know we were talking about food trucks, and I think, and I'm very unsure of the timeline. I'd look to you to educate me. Probably about 5 years ago, like the food truck revolution really started to get a little steam behind it. And I feel like we're in a pretty good place in it. Is it the big thing that it could be yet? Can it be bigger?
I think if the restrictions that food truck owners run into every day in New York City, if if that was taken out of the equation, I think that food trucks could be so much more. But unfortunately, in New York specifically, we have so many things working against us every day, that it really restricts how people want, it doesn't inspire people to want to open a truck. Opening a truck is a lot tougher than most people think. You think you can have a recipe and you go out, you buy a truck and you hit the street and it's just like the movie Chef and everybody's happy and you send a tweet and thousands of people show up, and it's not like that. So it could be so much more, but so many people become discouraged by the challenges that you face that people who really do have these great concepts that could have an amazing food truck, they probably are just going to go with a restaurant and not deal with the hassle of, the police, the health department, building managers, other commercial vehicles. I mean, there have been physical altercations and fights amongst so many different like groups with food trucks that it's just hard to make it more popular than it is right now.
Yeah, yeah, and you mentioned it being New York, and I don't know if you're aware of like how it is on the West Coast comparatively. It seems like it's a little more accepted over on the West Coast at this point. Am I correct? Incorrect?
Yeah, I would say it's each area is different. They have different rules, but I know that it's easier in the United States in every city except I believe Chicago. I don't know if they've changed the rule where you weren't even allowed to cook anything on the truck. you could only reheat with like electric or something like that in New York. So I assume that anywhere else it's simpler. And like in Los Angeles, for example, there's so many more places to park. Things are much more spread out. Whereas in New York City, you have a good block, 15 trucks are going to try to show up on that one good block. And eventually the police are going to say, no, I don't think so, which is what happened on Monday, and they're going to kick everybody out. So I think it's probably easier to have a food truck everywhere except New York City and Toronto. It is practically impossible at this point to have a successful food truck in like downtown Toronto area.
So wow, that's Canada and New York. You're pretty much done for, Lace. That's not good news for you.
Nope,
Man,
not at all.
well, I mean, I hope, they kind of get with the trend a little bit. It seems like just such a cool concept, and the downside as I see it is, so these folks who have these great ideas that want to do a food truck can't, they go and they open another restaurant. Well, it's just another restaurant. It's not as individual as, I don't know, I want to say unique as the food truck, because when I was doing my research for our interview, I didn't know that sweet chili was what you were doing. And when I looked at this, I was just like, wow, this is awesome. This is what food kind of should be. A little bit more cavalier, a little bit more, not Wild West, but just exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Right on. Well, here's hoping that it gets a little more steam, and here's hoping that New York City relaxes itself a little bit on that topic. Going back to the trend thing, is there any trend in the industry now that you wish would just go away, would just stop?
I'm not, there's no trends right now that are bothering me. I like a lot of things that are happening now with the organic and more natural. I think that it's just, better for you. Can I afford everything organic? Absolutely not.
Mm.
I don't really understand this whole pressed, cold pressed juice fad that's happening. I like good, Jamba Juice, or, sometimes my sister will have like a cucumber and kale and whatever that she makes with her juicer at home, and I'll drink that. But I don't understand paying $10 for a little, 8-ounce bottle of cold pressed juice that tastes like cucumber water. Tastes like someone took some Poland Spring or some New York City tap water and squeezed a slice of a cucumber into it and then charged me $10 for it. I understand that produce is very expensive, but I don't see how we've allowed the market to create such a demand for it that, $10, $12, $14 for a pressed juice is acceptable. I think the profit margin must be amazing for them.
I'm sure. Do you think cold pressed is an example of just hanging a name on something just for the sake of hanging a name on it?
Absolutely. It's the same as, cold brewed. We make iced coffee in the summertime on the truck. And it's cold brewed, but, up until a couple years ago, I would have never thought to, advertise it as cold brew. Yeah, it's cold coffee, and we're just, steeping the coffee in the water without applying heat. So now
Yeah.
there's a lot of
Well,
taglines put onto kids.
yeah. Well, I mean, also don't forget, Burger King is flame grilled, so let's all go there and just enjoy real craft burger.
Oh
Craft
yeah,
is another word that
definitely.
gets under my skin
And
sometimes.
handcrafted. Yes,
Yeah, hey, you and I both. All right, good. Yeah,
hmm
crafted. Well, of course it's crafted by your damn hands. We get it. Well done. All right. So,
Yep.
sweet chili doing its thing in New York. What's next for you? Is there something in the works? Is there something in your 5-year plan once Sweet Chili blows up? And I know it's going to, just because of this interview alone. People are going to like flock to it now. It's going to be crazy. But like, do you have a next step in mind, or are you just enjoying what it is right now?
We are definitely trying to expand the Sweet Chili brand. We would like to put it into a restaurant location very soon, especially with the cold winter coming on a truck. It's not fun. And then, with 5-year plan, definitely, have my little, Sweet Chili babies, and then, do the boutique higher end not super high-end, fancy fine dining, but higher-end restaurant where I can really do a lot more than the truck allows me to do.
Right on. Right on. Yeah. And see, that'll be the perfect marriage. Before I said, about the restaurant, being just another restaurant, but like if you can start with a food truck like you're doing and then grow that into a restaurant and have the two work together, that's got to be an amazing output. That's got to be an amazing product, period.
Yep, absolutely.
Cool. Very cool. Well, I mean, here's looking forward to it. And obviously, now that I know, and now that we were just up in New York not too long ago at the statue with the kids, I'm gonna definitely make it a point to swing by and check it out. So that's where you're at. That's where you're gonna be. So let's talk a little bit about the more fringe elements, the afters section of the interview, if you will. A little bit more out there questions, but again, just go with me. I promise. Like I said, no one's been hurt before yet. So I'm standing in your kitchen or your food truck or wherever, professionally or at home. It's your pick entirely. What music do I hear in your kitchen?
Well, that's the easiest question. Anyone who's been to my truck can already tell you. The music on the truck is strictly 80s and 90s music. We do not play top 40. We do not play, angry hip hop. We try to make sure none of the songs have curses because there are occasionally children, but I can't stop Alanis Morissette from saying the F-bomb and You Ought to Know. But I like to have fun while I'm working, and I like for people to feel engaged in the experience from the moment they're waiting on the line for the truck to the moment they walk away. So when we're playing, perfect example, yesterday it was a nice day out. Everybody was in a good mood. We were in Brooklyn, and the song Cotton Eye Joe came on, and this girl that has never been to the truck before, just like a crazy person, just started doing the Cotton Eye Joe dance in front of the truck. And for that alone, we gave her a free dessert.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, hey, listen, man, my neck's a little red, so if I were to hear that, I might have to bust it out too. Um, and now I know I get a free dessert for it, so
Yep.
that's pretty solid. Awesome. So 80s, 90s music. How's your mouth in the kitchen? I know from the show creative editing can create a mouth that's a bit more magnified, but how is it in the kitchen? How using the movie rating systems? Are you PG, 13, R?
Um, Before the food truck, definitely are. Potty mouth all the way. I curse to like put an emphasis on the enthusiasm where somebody would be like, "Oh, that's delicious." I'd be like, "Oh my God, that's effing amazing." Like that's just how I speak in life. But
Right,
with
right.
the truck, because I'm on display, I am very PG. I don't curse at all. If I can remember to, I'll actually try to bleep out the bad words on the songs. Like I'll just scream beep, because you're on display. There are children around you, and the truck is kind of like a giant tin can. So the what you say echoes to the customers. So
Sure.
everything you say while you're working in the truck, the customers will hear. I don't want the customers to see anything unprofessional, to hear anything unprofessional. So I keep it very, like, surprisingly very, very PG while I'm on the truck.
Yeah, and that's an important feature, I guess, to think about. When you're in a professional kitchen, there's always the two doors or the one big door, and then a wall that separates you from the world. I did a little bit of line work in college, and like you could get away with murder in the back, because you didn't hear it
Mhm.
out there. In a food truck, like you said, a tin can, you're there on display. I think that almost makes the food truck experience that much more honest and intimate.
Absolutely. The customers can see, our window is very large, and people like to kind of stand on their tippy toes and look inside, and we welcome that. So we're very transparent. You can see everything that's happening. We face you while we're cooking. We talk to you while we're cooking. And you hear it all, you see it all, you smell it all. It's We're so transparent that people just they'll order with their eyes. They don't even look at the menu. They're like, I want
Yeah.
that. What was that you just, oh yeah, no, I want that. So it's important. You're not hiding in a basement kitchen in a dungeon all day and you don't see daylight. You're on display, you're outside, and you're right in front of every customer. So if somebody doesn't like something, they're going to tell you to your face that they don't like it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's going to be no wait staff buffer between it. And, on a more positive note, you're probably inspiring a future generation of culinary professionals.
Yeah, I hope so.
Right on. Very cool. Very cool. So, complete turnaround, theoretical situation. You're going to be stranded on a deserted island. No more food truck, no more New York, deserted island. And you're only allowed to take 3 foods or food items along with you. What would they be and why?
Oof. Definitely coffee, because I'm a coffee junkie. I drink way too much coffee every day, and you don't want to see me without it. Can it be like a whole encompassed? Like, can I say dim sum? Is that an acceptable answer?
Absolutely.
Okay. So
Yes,
definitely
totally.
dim sum and cereal. Oh my God, I love cereal.
Cool. Very cool. Um, yeah, that's always such a tough one, and people, I'm amazed at how panicky people get sometimes when I ask the question, like, well, wait a minute, can it be this? Can it be that? I'm like, I'm not sending you to the island. It's gonna be okay. So we can just we can just make the rules as we go. But I mean, it's a serious, it's almost a fear-inducing question, I think. Like, my God, what do I need? Well,
Yep.
I need champagne. What kind of champagne? Do I need champagne? I have to eat. Do I? I don't know. Cool. Very cool. Um, Thinking back, spanning the gamut of your phenomenal career, what is, if there is one, there might not be one. You seem pretty fearless to me, but if there is one, what is the food or dish that's still just terrifies you? Like when you hear it, you might be able to make it even. Yeah, and you might be able to make it well, but when you hear people ask for it, the fear of God goes through you.
I honestly, I don't have a fear of anything. The only thing that, if you asked me to cook you something that would make my stomach turn, would be salmon. And again, it's not
Salmon,
because it's a
yes.
fear. It's more of a fear of maybe throwing up on you as I'm serving it to you.
That's so terrible. I feel bad for you. So salmon, but not because of preparing it. All right, I got it. Got it. Hey, have you ever read any of Melanie Denea's works, My Last Supper?
No.
Okay, so long story short, it's a book of 50 famous chefs, and then she did a follow-up to it. And the long story short of it is it's these series of 6 questions, I believe, and just asking the parameters as to that chef's last meal. What would it be like? What would be there? So I always kind of tip my hat and say, this question, the format for the podcast is kind of lifted from her, but this question is definitely stealing the idea from her, as far as what would your last supper be. But it's, from what I understand, from Tony Bourdain's books, it's a game that you play late night if you're in the food industry. So, chef, I ask you, what would be your ideal last supper? Who would be there? What would be served? What would you drink? And what music would be playing?
So for drink, I would definitely be drinking bourbon. That one's easy. People to be there would be, my immediate family, my wife, our kid, my parents, my sister, my like closest friends since, I have my friend that I've known since I was in first grade, and we're still very close. So my absolute closest friends. And then I would do like a tasting menu, but it would range from, of course, I keep going back to dim sum, but the first course would be, a couple specific dishes from dim sum, shark fin dumplings, tofu skin roll. That's just like a simple, looks like a little tiny burrito in an oyster sauce. I would serve the juiciest, most ridiculous, lots of topping hamburger that I can find with like some like really, really good, simple French fries. I would want at least 5 items containing passion fruit, because I think that's probably my favorite flavor and scent. Of course, then there would have to be some coffee with the dessert. And I think for dessert, I would want like a crazy like ice cream bar, sort of similar to the places where you can kind of mix in your own toppings. I love ice cream with, I put cornflakes on ice cream since I was a kid. Just everything you can think of, like marshmallow sauce and strawberries and Rocky Road ice cream and sprinkles and I don't even know, bananas. Like the more the merrier. I could probably make like a 50-pound ice cream sundae if I was really given the opportunity.
Jesus, that'd be the way to go out, wouldn't it? A 50
Yep,
pound
absolutely.
ice cream
Even though
sundae. I
I'm
could
lactose
I could deal with
intolerant,
that.
so not the best.
Right on, right on. And hey, you mentioned bourbon. What's your bourbon of choice? Anybody that mentions bourbon has their bourbon. What's your bourbon?
Recently I've been a big fan of the Elijah Craig. Um,
Nice.
but I'm still learning a lot about bourbon. I've gotten into it over the last year, and I feel like I could drink it all day, every day, even though obviously I don't. Um, but I've had some really, really fantastic, expensive, fancy bourbons, and then I've had some, Elijah Craig is really, really good, and it's not insanely expensive. I think it's maybe $30 a bottle, and it's well worth it. It is so good. It is so smooth, and you can mix it with anything. You can drink it, on the rocks. It's a really versatile, really, really yummy drink, and I actually make a cocktail with it that I can even get my mother to drink, and my mother doesn't really drink.
And what's the cocktail? You got to tell me now.
I basically make a bourbon sour, but then I take like cherry preserves and I just forgot what it's called. Saint Germain, and I mix that
Oh,
together with a little bit of egg white and get it super, super frothy. It is so delicious, and you can do it with,
holy.
strawberry preserves. I've done it with guava paste. You can really like any kind
Mm.
of other than grape jelly, anything you have in your fridge. Just put it in there and shake it up really, really well. Oh, so good.
Oh my God, that sounds amazing. That sounds amazing. As soon as you said cherry preserves and bourbon, I thought like a modified Manhattan, but
Hmm.
wow, that sounds just ridiculous. Amazing, amazing. And finally, Chef, actually last question for you, possibly the hardest. It's definitely the simplest, but it gives people the most pause. What is food to you in a single word?
Everything.
Awesome. 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 And the fact that there wasn't even a pause, there wasn't even a second between it. You just know.
As soon as you started the question, like, what is food to you? I was like, it's everything to me. I eat, sleep, drink, for lack of a better term. Everything is, my work is food. My hobbies are food. On my days off, I'm cooking, 5 or 6 different options for my kid to have in the fridge. When I have free time, it's going out to dinner and having drinks. I don't eat to stay alive. If I did that, I would be much thinner. I eat because it's emotion. It's when you're happy, you eat. When you're sad, you eat. When you're, you know,
Wow.
food is
That
food
quote
is my
right
world.
there. That quote right there. I don't eat to stay alive. I eat to live. Like that's,
Yep.
and I paraphrased it just a twinge, but I think that's what you're going for. That's God Almighty. That's something to write down, folks. That's something to write down, memorize, and recite it because that's really, I think, I mean, I feel the exact same way. What food should be for sure. So, well, Chef, that brings our time together to a close, unfortunately, because I'd love to hang out and talk with you for like ever, but that's the way a show goes, I guess. Is there anything I can plug for you here today as we wrap up? Obviously, Sweet Chili at sweetchilinyc.com. Anything else that's going on?
Really just, focusing on sweet chili right now, putting all my time and effort into that and trying to get as many fans through that food outlet as I can. And, as I just invite everybody to come to the truck, introduce yourself, chat with me while I'm making your food, come back,
Yeah,
bring your friends, just come to Sweet Chili and check it out. Once you come, you're going to be hooked for sure.
absolutely. And you're sending the notifications out on Twitter as to its location?
Absolutely. I tweet and put a photo on Instagram every single day with where we're going to be.
Cool. So check it out. Sweet Chili on Twitter. Look it up. Watch it. Follow it. Stalk it if you must. By the menu alone, it's amazing. And Lisa, I'm going to make my way up there for sure. But thank you so much for taking the time to do this with me today. It's been great.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Cool. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes episode number 11 of the Coarse Grind podcast. Again, today my guest has been Chef Lisa Fernandes of Sweet Chili, sweetchilinyc.com. Look up Sweet Chili on Twitter to see where they're going to be next. My producer, as always, the amazing Johnny Lamoria Robinson of the Pleasure Saucer podcast. And again, my name, Sean Rossler, host, creator of the Coarse Grind podcast. And check it out, episode 12, hopefully coming sooner than later. Be sure to stay tuned, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care. Lise, this is my son Wesley. He's 7, so I don't have the headphones on. I can't hear you, but he's the one talking. He wanted to talk to you.
How are you?
Good.
Yeah, I heard that you like sushi. What kind of sushi do you like?
All types.
Do you like spicy tuna? Do you like eel?
No,
do you
just
like
the
it with
regular.
avocado?
I just like the regular kind.
Very cool.
And
Is
then
that your
I like
favorite food?
tuna too. Yeah.
Awesome.
And then my
Chef one day.
favorite food is crab.
Wow. What kind of crab?
When I grow up, I want to be a chef.
Wow, that's amazing. You should come by
Thank
the
you.
truck when you can. Tell your dad to bring you.
Okay. Bye.
Cool. I hope to see you soon.